Girl dresses as a boy to get a job. When her secret is revealed, she faces unexpected consequences that change her life. Marigold Lark stood in front of the bathroom mirror, a buzz of anxiety coursing through her veins. For months, she had faced rejection after rejection, each one adding another layer to her frustration. Today, however, she was determined to change her fate. With a deep breath, she picked up the scissors. If they won't hire me as Marigold, maybe they'll hire me as Mark, she thought, a hint of defiance in her heart. As she cut her long brown hair into a short, boyish style, she couldn't shake the unease that settled in her stomach. This was more than just a haircut, it was a transformation. She rummaged through her brother's closet, pulling out a button-up shirt and a pair of trousers that hung loosely on her frame. Standing in the clothes, she felt like a stranger in her own body. What if they see through it? She whispered to herself, trying to ignore the reflection that felt so foreign. The clock ticked down to the hour of her interview with Tech Corp, a male-dominated company that had become infamous for its lack of diversity. As Marigold stepped into the building, her heart raced. The sleek glass doors seemed to tower over her, and the walls were adorned with images of successful men in suits. "Keep it together, Mark," she muttered under her breath, forcing herself to walk straight. Inside the interview room, she faced Gregor, the recruiter. He sat behind a large desk, arms crossed, his brow furrowed with skepticism. "So, Mark," he began, a hint of doubt in his voice. Marigold's stomach flipped. "Tell me about your experience in programming." Marigold took a moment to gather her thoughts, the weight of her disguise heavy on her chest. "I've worked on several projects focusing on web development and software solutions," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I enjoy tackling complex problems and finding efficient solutions." Gregor raised an eyebrow, clearly not convinced. "And what makes you think you can fit in here?" A wave of determination washed over Marigold. "I'm passionate about technology," she said firmly, "and I believe I can contribute positively to your team." As the interview unfolded, Marigold felt a mix of fear and determination. She fought against the urge to fidget, trying to maintain the persona of Mark. Each question felt like a test, each answer a tightrope walk over a chasm of potential failure. "What if I'm not enough?" she thought, her mind racing with self-doubt. But then, something unexpected happened. Gregor leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "You know what, Mark? I think you could be a good fit for us. Welcome aboard." Marigold's heart soared, a rush of relief flooding over her. She had done it. She had secured the job, but as she left the room, a knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. How long could she keep up this charade? Would they ever find out the truth? Outside the building, the sun warmed her face, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to smile. "I did it," she whispered, the words tasting sweet on her tongue. But lurking beneath the joy was the fear of being discovered, the fear of what would happen if her true identity came to light. Marigold took a deep breath, trying to push the worry aside. She had made a choice, and now she had to live with it. But as she walked away from Tech Corp, she couldn't help but wonder, would this decision lead her to her dreams, or was it just another step into the unknown? Marigold Lark sat at her small kitchen table, her fingers tapping nervously on the surface. The morning sun poured through the window, illuminating her half-finished coding project. Programming had always been her passion, a spark that ignited when she first learned to write simple lines of code in high school. The sense of accomplishment she felt back then was unmistakable, but the journey had not been easy. As a woman in tech, Marigold faced countless obstacles. She remembered the time she stood in front of a group of men during a team meeting, her voice trembling as she presented her ideas. Their dismissive glances and half-hearted nods stung. "You're lucky to be here, Marigold," one of them had said, a smirk on his face. "Just don't get too comfortable." These moments had piled up over the years, creating a weight she could no longer carry. The rejection letters from job applications echoed in her mind, each one a reminder of the biases that plagued her industry. Frustration bubbled within her. "I can't keep doing this," she muttered to herself, her determination hardened. That's when she decided to become Mark. As she prepared for her first day at the new job, a mixture of excitement and dread filled her. She had landed a position at a tech company known for its male-dominated culture. "This is my chance," she whispered, trying to silence the nagging voice of doubt. Yet, the fear of being discovered lurked in the back of her mind like a shadow. Walking into the office for the first time, Marigold felt her heart race. She wore her brother's clothes, the fabric slightly loose on her frame, but it was the short hair that transformed her the most. She took a deep breath, reminding herself of her goal. "You can do this. Just be confident," she told herself. The office buzzed with energy, a stark contrast to her quiet home. Men filled the space, their loud laughter and casual banter echoing off the walls. Marigold hesitated at the entrance, her stomach churning. Just blend in, she thought. Her first task was to meet with Jackson, a fellow programmer who had been assigned to help her. As she approached him, she noticed the way he studied her. "Hey Mark, right?" he asked, a friendly smile on his face. "Yeah, that's me," Marigold replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Jackson nodded, and they fell into a light conversation about the projects they would be working on. "I heard you're really good at coding," he said, genuine interest in his eyes. "I could use a solid partner." Marigold felt a warm flutter in her chest. "Thanks, I've been coding for a while now," she said, pride creeping into her voice. For a moment, she almost forgot about her disguise. However, as the days passed, the pressure began to mount. Every interaction with Jackson and the other team members sent waves of anxiety through her. What if they found out? What if Jackson discovered she was not who she claimed to be? She had to keep up the act, and that meant constantly worrying about slipping up. One afternoon, as they worked side by side, Jackson glanced over at her. "You know, I think you're overthinking this," he said lightly, noticing the way she furrowed her brow. "Just be yourself. We're all here to learn and grow together." Marigold's heart raced. "But what if they find out?" "I can't risk that," she replied, her voice tinged with fear. Jackson frowned, concern etched on his face. "You have to trust that you belong here, Mark. You're talented, and you deserve this opportunity." His words resonated with her, a small glimmer of hope in the midst of her internal chaos. Still, every time she looked in the mirror, she saw a stranger staring back, a man who felt foreign to her. The excitement of her new job was overshadowed by the constant fear of being exposed. Yet, as she navigated her days at the office, Marigold found small moments of joy in her work and the budding friendship with Jackson. Each laugh they shared made her feel a little more at ease, but the weight of her secret loomed larger. As she sat at her desk, coding late into the night, she couldn't shake the feeling that her world was built on a fragile foundation, one that could come crashing down at any moment. Marigold Lark sat at her desk, staring at the screen in front of her. Each day at the tech company felt like a balancing act. She had to navigate conversations with colleagues while carefully avoiding any slip that could reveal her true identity. With every interaction, the weight of her disguise pressed heavily on her shoulders. The toxic masculinity that flowed through the office made it even harder. Jokes about women in tech rang in her ears, and she often had to laugh along, even though it twisted her stomach. One afternoon, the atmosphere shifted when Jackson, a fellow programmer, approached her desk. He had a curious look on his face and leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Hey, Mark, did you see the latest update on our project?" Marigold nodded, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, I've been working on the new features. I think we can push it out by next week." "Good, I like your ideas," Jackson replied, his eyes glimmering with genuine interest. "But I have to ask, how did you get into programming? You're really good." Marigold felt a flush of warmth. She wanted to share her passion, but the fear of being found out loomed over her. "Oh, just picked it up along the way," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Been doing it for a while." As Jackson walked away, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was starting to see through her facade. Her heart raced at the thought, and she returned to her work, trying to push the anxiety aside. but the pressure was mounting. Later that week, a stressful situation arose. Marigold was in the break room when she overheard a conversation between two colleagues. "Did you see Mark's social media? I found it by accident," one of them said. "He's not what he seems." Marigold froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Panic washed over her. What if they found her profile? What if they realized she was actually Marigold? She quickly grabbed her coffee and left the break room, her mind racing. The next day, she sat at her desk, her hands trembling as she scrolled through her social media profiles. She had kept everything private, but what if someone had found a way in? She glanced over at Jackson, who was deep in conversation with another colleague. The fear of exposure clung to her like a shadow. That afternoon, Jackson stopped by her desk again. "You seem a bit off, Mark. Everything okay?" Marigold hesitated, the truth bubbling just beneath the surface. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind." "Want to talk about it?" he offered, his tone sincere. She shook her head, forcing a smile. "I appreciate it, but I'm good." As he walked away, a storm brewed inside her. The growing bond between them was both comforting and terrifying. Jackson's genuine interest in her work was refreshing, but it made her question her choice to keep up the deception. She wanted to be accepted for who she truly was, but the risks felt too high. That night, as she lay in bed, Marigold wrestled with her thoughts. Should she continue living as Mark? The idea of revealing her true self terrified her, but the thought of hiding felt suffocating. She longed for acceptance, but was it worth the risk of losing everything she had worked for? Days turned into weeks, and Marigold found herself caught in a web of uncertainty. Each day at the office became a careful dance, as she tried to maintain her disguise while yearning for authenticity. One afternoon, as she worked late, Jackson popped his head into her office. "Hey, I'm heading out. Want to join me for a quick coffee?" Marigold's heart raced at the invitation. She wanted to say yes, to connect with him as herself, but the fear of being discovered held her back. "I can't. I have some work to finish," she replied, her voice betraying her inner turmoil. Jackson frowned but nodded. "All right. Just know I'm here if you need to talk." As he left, Marigold felt a pang of regret. The connection they shared was real, but her fear kept her locked away in her disguise. She knew she needed to decide soon, but the choice weighed heavily on her heart. The fear of exposure and the longing for acceptance tugged at her, leaving her in a constant state of turmoil. The tension in the office was palpable on that fateful day. Marigold sat at her desk, her heart racing. Just moments ago, she had overheard Jackson talking with another colleague about a social media post that had revealed her true identity. The walls of her carefully constructed facade felt like they were closing in. "Mark, did you see the latest post?" Jackson asked, his voice low but urgent. Marigold's stomach twisted. "No, what did it say?" she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Jackson leaned closer, concern etched on his face. "It's about you. Someone found out that you're actually Marigold Lark." The words hit her like a cold wave. Panic surged through her. "What? How did they find out?" she gasped. "I don't know," Jackson admitted, his brow furrowing. "But we need to talk to Gregor before this gets out of hand." As they approached Gregor's office, Marigold's legs felt heavy. What would happen now? Would she be fired? Would her coworkers hate her? Inside the office, Gregor looked up from his desk, his expression unreadable. "What's going on?" he asked, sensing the urgency in their voices. Jackson stepped forward, clearly agitated. "It's about Mark. There's been a leak about his real identity." Gregor's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Marigold took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'm not Mark. I'm Marigold. I've been using a disguise to work here because I was afraid of not being accepted as a woman in this industry." The silence in the room was deafening. Gregor's expression shifted from confusion to anger. "You deceived us? This is a serious breach of trust." Marigold's voice trembled. I know it sounds bad, but I was desperate. I just wanted a chance to prove myself. I didn't think I'd be successful as a woman. You should have come to me, Gregor said, frustration seeping into his words. We might have found another way. At that moment, the door swung open, and several of their colleagues gathered, drawn by the commotion. Whispers filled the air, and Marigold felt their eyes on her, a mix of outrage and curiosity. What's happening? One of them asked, glancing between Gregor and Marigold. Mark isn't who he says he is, Gregor replied, his voice cold. He's been lying to everyone. Marigold's heart raced as she faced the crowd. I didn't mean to deceive you all, she said, her voice gaining strength. I just wanted to fit in. I've faced so much sexism in this industry, and I thought this was my only way in. Those words struck a chord. A few colleagues exchanged glances, their expressions softening. Jackson stepped forward again, his voice firm. What Marigold did was wrong, yes, but look at the culture we have here. We've all seen how women are treated. She was just trying to survive. Another colleague, a woman Marigold recognized as Sarah, spoke up. I can't believe this. I've been in situations where I felt I had to hide who I was too. It's hard out there. The atmosphere shifted. Some of Marigold's co-workers began to voice their support. We should be talking about why she felt the need to do this, not just the fact that she did, one man said. As the murmurs continued, Marigold felt a surge of relief mixed with fear. She stood tall, her heart pounding. I'm tired of hiding. I want to be honest about my struggles and my passion for this work. I want to help change things so that no one else feels the need to hide. A heavy silence fell over the room. Gregor crossed his arms, still visibly upset, but now there was a flicker of contemplation in his eyes. Thank you for sharing this, Marigold, Jackson said, his voice gentle. It takes courage to stand up and be honest, especially when you're scared. We should all be looking out for each other. Marigold's heart swelled with a mix of gratitude and vulnerability. She had finally shared her truth, and despite the fear of backlash, she felt a weight lifting off her shoulders. The conversation shifted from anger to understanding, and for the first time, she felt like she could breathe. As they began to discuss the changes that needed to happen in the office, Marigold realized that her journey was far from over, but she was no longer alone. In the days following Marigold's explosive reveal, an uneasy silence hung over the office. The air felt thick with tension, and Marigold could sense the weight of judgment from her colleagues. She sat at her desk, staring at her computer screen, but not really seeing anything. Her mind raced with thoughts of losing her job, her friendships, and maybe even her chance to work in the tech field she loved. Hey, you all right? Jackson appeared at her side, his expression a mix of concern and determination. Marigold forced a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. I'm fine. Just thinking. Thinking about what? The way everyone is looking at you? Trust me, I get it, Jackson said, sitting down on the edge of her desk. But you need to talk to someone. Don't shut me out. She sighed and turned to him, her voice barely above a whisper. What if they all want me gone? What if I'm not safe here anymore? Jackson reached out, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. You are safe with me. I'm not going anywhere. Besides, you deserve to be here just as much as anyone else. Marigold looked into Jackson's eyes, searching for any hint of insincerity, but found none. I just don't know how to move forward, she admitted. I thought hiding was the only way to fit in. And now? Jackson asked gently. Now I see that being myself is what I should have done all along, Marigold replied, her voice gaining strength. But it's scary. What if I lose everything? You might lose some people, but you will gain others, Jackson said. You will find those who appreciate you for who you are. Trust me on this. Just give it a chance. Marigold nodded slowly. Okay, I'll try. That afternoon, she gathered her courage and decided to take a walk around the office. As she passed by a group of colleagues, she heard snippets of conversation. Some whispered harsh words, while others defended her. The mixed reactions made her heart race. Then, she noticed a familiar face in the crowd, Samantha, a teammate who had always been kind to her. With a deep breath, Marigold approached her. "Samantha, can we talk?" she asked, her voice shaky. "Of course, Marigold," Samantha replied, gesturing for them to step away from the group. "I wanted to check on you. The situation has been tough." "Thanks," Marigold replied, her throat tight. I feel like I don't belong here anymore." Samantha shook her head. "That's not true. You have a right to be here. You're talented, and your work speaks for itself. Don't let this make you doubt yourself." Marigold felt a rush of gratitude. "You really mean that?" "Absolutely. I think it's brave what you did." "It's time for change in this industry," Samantha said firmly. "We need more voices like yours." As they spoke, Marigold felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she could find acceptance after all. Encouraged by Samantha's words, she decided to share her experience in the next team meeting. When the meeting day arrived, Marigold stood in front of her colleagues, her heart pounding. She looked around the room, seeing familiar faces filled with curiosity and uncertainty. Jackson gave her a supportive nod from the back. "Thank you for gathering here," Marigold began, her voice steadying. "I know this week has been difficult for all of us. I want to share my story, not just for me, but for anyone else who feels they cannot be themselves." As she spoke, a wave of emotions washed over her. She recounted her struggles, her fears, and the reasons behind her disguise. Some listened intently, while others shifted uncomfortably. Yet, she pressed on, determined to be authentic. "Being true to myself is more important than fitting in. I hope we can create a culture where everyone feels safe to be who they are," she finished, her heart racing. A silence followed, then Jackson broke it with a round of applause. Slowly, others joined in, and Marigold felt tears prick at her eyes. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. After the meeting, several colleagues approached her, offering support. "I admire your courage," one said. Another added, "We need to do better as a team." Marigold realized that while the road ahead would be challenging, she would not walk it alone. With newfound allies at her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next, embracing her identity with strength and determination. Marigold stood in front of the mirror, her reflection showing a woman ready to embrace her true self. The fear that once gripped her heart had transformed into a powerful sense of confidence. She smiled at herself, feeling the weight of her past lift away. With every passing day, she found herself becoming more comfortable in her own skin. "Today is the day," she whispered as she adjusted her shirt. This was not just another day at work, it was a new beginning. As she walked into the office, she felt a mix of nerves and excitement. The familiar sounds of keyboards clacking and phones ringing surrounded her, but this time, it felt different. She was no longer hiding. The atmosphere in the office had begun to shift since her revelation. Colleagues who once avoided her now greeted her with supportive smiles. Conversations flowed more easily, and the tension in the air was slowly dissipating. It was a welcome change that gave Marigold hope. "Hey, Marigold," Jackson called out from his desk, his face lighting up when he saw her. "You look great today." "Thanks, Jackson. I feel great," she replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. He had become a true friend, someone who supported her through the toughest moments. As they chatted, Marigold noticed a group of her co-workers gathered at the break room. They were deep in discussion, and she could see the topic was serious. Curiosity piqued, she walked over to listen. "We need to talk about how we treat each other in this workplace," one of her colleagues, Lisa, said, her voice firm. "Marigold's story has opened our eyes. We can no longer ignore the issues around gender identity and equality." Marigold felt a surge of pride. It was incredible to see her experience igniting change. She joined the group, eager to contribute. "I believe everyone deserves to feel safe and accepted here," she added, her voice steady. "We should create a support group for anyone who feels they don't fit in." The room fell silent for a moment before another colleague, Mark, spoke up. "That's a great idea, Marigold. We should all be able to express who we are without fear." A wave of agreement washed over the group, and they began brainstorming ideas for the support group. They discussed how they could create a space where everyone could share their experiences and feel understood. Marigold felt a sense of belonging grow within her, something she had longed for since the beginning of her journey. Later that afternoon, Marigold sat down with Jackson to discuss their next steps. "I think we should have our first meeting next week," she suggested, excitement bubbling in her voice. "We can invite anyone who wants to join, even if they just want to listen." "I love that idea," Jackson replied, nodding enthusiastically. "And we can create a safe space where people can express their feelings without judgment." As they planned, Marigold reflected on how far she had come. She had taken a leap of faith by revealing her true self, and now she was helping others do the same. The fear of being judged had faded, replaced by a determination to foster acceptance and understanding in her workplace. In the days that followed, the support group began to take shape. Their first meeting was well attended, with colleagues from various departments showing up. Marigold felt a rush of emotions as she looked around the room. People were eager to share their stories, and the atmosphere was filled with encouragement. As she stood in front of her peers, Marigold felt a sense of fulfillment. "Thank you all for being here," she said, her voice slightly trembling with emotion. "This is a safe space for us to share and learn from one another." The group listened attentively as one by one, they spoke about their experiences. Some shared stories of discrimination, while others expressed their fears of not being accepted. Marigold felt their pain, but also their strength. At the end of the meeting, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. "This is just the beginning," she said, looking around at her colleagues. "Together, we can make a difference. We can create a workplace where everyone feels valued and accepted." As the meeting concluded, Marigold realized that her journey for acceptance had inspired others to confront their own truths. She had paved the way for a more authentic future, not just for herself, but for everyone in the room. A sense of hope filled her heart as she left the meeting, knowing that together, they could create a lasting change. Share this story if you believe that embracing your true self can inspire change in the world. Leave a comment about a moment when you found courage to be yourself, and subscribe to our channel for more uplifting stories like this one.